Thanks for joining us this week on Indigenous Earth Community Podcast on the intersection of Indigenous wisdom and environment conservation. If you are enjoying the show, let us know by giving us a rating on your favorite podcast app and share it with a friend. That would help us tremendously. Today is a very special episode with Sky Wildcat from the Cherokee Nation. I met Sky last year on Unity's conference in Orlando. As Sky joined myself and other Earth ambassadors to do some eco-action, cleaning a local spot of litter. And then we organized and did a presentation on learning to culturally care for the environment and water conservation. In this episode, we talk about her experience riding her bicycle on the Remember the Removal bike ride, a 950-mile journey of self-discovery that went along the same pathway that around 180 years ago was used to forcibly remove her ancestors. We discussed her most professional accomplishments so far, such as being an advocate for Native students and how she deeply believed in the power of education for Indigenous youth. Stay tuned as Sky also shares how remembered traditions can help us pull her through this difficult time. Hey Sky, how are you?
I am doing well. How are you, Frank?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks so much for being here on our podcast. I think the last time we saw each other, we did a presentation on the Unity conference.
Yeah, since I couldn't make it to mid-year, the last time I think we would have seen each other was at the national conference in Orlando.
And that was pretty cool. We did a presentation about different ways that we can help the earth.
Yes, cleaning up kayaking the river, that was pretty cool. Glad that we got to do that.
Have you kayaked before?
Yeah, I won a kayak at a river cleanup here in Tahlequah, so that's kind of funny. But yeah, I love to kayak.
That's awesome. For me, it's like being in church because it's so calm and so peaceful that I really connect with nature. And then by doing a cleanup, that's just like a plus, you know. Before we start, I was wondering if you have any kind of words of wisdom that we can kind of ground ourselves with before we begin.
One of my favorite quotes by one of my favorite people, the man killer, her quote is, "I don't think anybody anywhere can talk about the future of their people or of an organization without talking about education. Whoever controls the education of our children controls our future."
That's very deep. I know that you're very passionate about education.
Yeah.
And how does that speak to you?
It's just kind of a reminder every day with the work that I'm doing. You know, everybody has a passion, there has to be at some point where they get a little tired. There's a reason that they have a passion. You know, there's a reason that, you know, there's barriers put in place that they've come to feel like they can take those barriers down. And so I feel that way about education, but it also, you know, I do get tired. And so when I get tired, I think about people like Woman Man Killer who really pressed and pushed for the education of our Indigenous people.
That's amazing. And talking about pushing, this kind of reminds me, you told me about this really incredible bike ride that you went through. Can you tell me a little more about it?
Yeah. So it's called the Remember the Removal bike ride. It's through Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. It's a 3-week bike ride, usually towards the end of May, middle June. And so you are on a bike for 3 weeks from New Echota, Georgia, which was where the Treaty of New Echota was signed, which did solidify the removal of Cherokees. And you travel from there to Tahlequah, Oklahoma, which is the capital of the Cherokee Nation, and just it kind of signifies where the trail ended. And so we do that. The participant numbers vary each year, but my year, I believe we had 9 or 10 participants from Cherokee Nation, and then we meet up with a team from the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians from Cherokee, North Carolina.
Yes, and in a way, it's a very symbolic journey that you're taking, but at the same time, it is a physical journey because you are there on the trail on your bicycle. And do you have any kind of like strong emotions when you're passing through the same roads that the removal went through?
Oh, yeah. So you actually train for about 6 months before you leave, before you go to Georgia, and it's pretty rigorous training. You have to go through, I think, a couple of physicals just to make sure that your body's ready. I know that for me, during the middle of my training, I had kidney failure, and so my kidneys were only working at about 14 to 16%, and that was really scary for me. Not only just, I think that I wasn't too worried about my personal health. I was a little bit, but at the time I was like, am I going to be able to do this ride? It's something that's the only goal that I'd ever really set for myself before. And I wanted to accomplishment. I wanted to do it with the team, that became family to me. And so just that physical training alone up until like the time that you are passing, the burial sites, the unmarked graves, just even like the trees and stuff like that. I think about how those trees were probably there the same time that they, were forced to walk through. And also before then, you're reading a journal that just it has like a few accounts of, or it is a journal full of accounts of, people, what happened on the trail. But it's from the perspective of a missionary. So it's a little, you're kind of like questioning, yourself and morale this whole time, because a lot of what fueled the removal came from, Christian doctrine. And a lot of what the bad that has happened to Native people has also come from Christian doctrine. So reading those accounts based off of like a missionary, it really kind of sparks this reflection of who am I? Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, how am I remembering the people who got me here today? I think everybody that has gone the ride that can tell you, like, they still think about some aspect to this day, whether they did it in 1984 or, 2019. Between all those years, somebody somewhere is probably thinking about the ride right now.
It's something that would stay with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine how strong it is to be writing in two time frames. You're writing on your own time frame, but you're writing about the people that went to the experience of the removal.
Yeah.
And I feel like that experience, you're there, with health problems, but you're able to finish. I think is like a representation of who we are. You always want to accomplish things that you set your mind to. And I know now that you're helping other students as a student service coordinator. And what is that entails?
Yeah. So as a student services coordinator, my focus is on recruitment, retention, and advocacy for Native students. I had never thought of myself recruiting students to higher education isn't something that I ever saw myself in. I more of wanted to kind of be like a resource and serve as, helping them retain, helping them assess all these barriers. But so something that I did this past year as in a new position, I had the first Native Recruitment Day for Northeastern State University, which is kind of crazy to think about. We are a school with approximately like 35, or it could be more now, percentage of Native students. So to think that we've never had a specific day or like a specific approach to get Native students to our school is a little bit crazy to me and to the people that I was working with, but we made it happen. And I think that's probably one of my proudest professional accomplishments so far, because it's something that I can build on. It's something that I can watch grow. Of course, I did it with a team of people that, I wouldn't have asked for anybody else. I also work on retention for Native students. Right now, especially, we're doing quarterly check-ins. It's more than just saying, how are your grades? It's, do you have internet at home? Do you have food right now? What's going on with your family? How are you handling all of this? And just outside of, have you done your homework yet? It's the questions that we have to ask to make sure that they have their basic needs met. And so we just kind of do that throughout the year and just preparing them for life after college. It really is multifaceted in that there isn't nothing, no student ever looks the same, but especially Native students. There's, an array of things that we have to consider whenever we're working with them. But that's a little bit of what I do. I also do some advising for Native student organizations. So I I just really have a good opportunity to learn from, people that are younger than me, not too much younger than me, but also on the professional side of things, I get to see how higher education works and how I plan to change it in the future years.
That is amazing. And I'm so glad that you're asking those questions like, have they eaten today? Because I feel like that's kind of oversaw like for a lot of stuff. There's a poem that kind of reminds me what you're telling me about, checking in with the students. It's called Causa Ain't Got a Pencil by Joshua Dickerson. And it
Oh, yeah.
says, you heard that one before?
Yeah, it's a good poem.
Yeah. It says, I woke up myself up because we ain't got an alarm clock. Dug in the dirty clothes basket cause ain't nobody washed my uniform. Brush my hair and teeth in the dark cause the lights ain't on. Even got my baby sister ready cause my mama wasn't home. Got us both to school on time to eat us a good breakfast. Then when I got to class, the teacher fussed it because I ain't got a pencil. You're saying that you have to check with the students because if they're not attending the class, usually, I'll say a couple years ago, that's what people will see, they're not attending the class. But now we're going through and trying to figure out why they're not attending the class. Is it because they're, maybe they have to go to work? Maybe they're having troubles with their family. So I really appreciate that you're really looking into what's going on with the students. I can only imagine how crazy it has to be for you right now because of the coronavirus pandemic.
Luckily, we do have a pretty big support system. The other center that I work closely with, they're trying to work with a grant that they got or was originally for the census. And so now they're trying to kind of mold it to where they can hopefully get some Wi-Fi for students at home who don't have any internet, and that's the only way that they're going to get their homework turned in. So there's that. And then just students just trying to find some sense of normalcy as much as you can for them, and which is seemingly impossible because, what's a normalcy for us? This isn't a job that we've ever done from home. It's usually in person. And so just like everybody else on the planet right now, which is crazy to think about, we're trying to navigate and find different ways to approach them and to help them without actually being able to be in front of them. And it feels like new things keep coming up, and especially some students now, they're not going to be able to graduate with a normal graduation, which is really sentimental for, however many years or months that you put into this hard work, and you just want to be able to show it off and walk across the stage. And now it looks a lot different for you than it does for, everybody else. So there's a lot of emotions, I think, that we're having to learn to navigate and approach, and also within ourselves. It's just how can we carry the burden of our students and try as much as we can to help them, but also, carry the burden of our own loved ones, our own communities, just our own work. And it's just, it's weird. It's unheard of for at least our generation. At the same time, in saying that, we still do have immunocompromised students and populations who have been living like this for decades or not their whole lifetime. It's also being careful in how we approach the situation because we're not alone, and also is to, whenever this does end, we do have that choice to be able to go back outside and do the things that we used to do, whereas other people, they still won't. This is the life that they have to live. So it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to reflect on. I guess that's also kind of the point of this time, is just reflecting on what we do have when we can and learning to stay positive.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, it's a lot to take in, but I feel like nature always is able to give us solace and tranquility and peace. Is there anything that you're doing now these times? I know we're not able to go out as we used to before, but is there any way that nature is giving you a little bit of solace in these hard times?
Yeah, definitely. So we have a river in town, and we have creeks, and we just have a bunch of foliage and just hills and trees that you can just kind of go outside and just take a minute. I have a hammock, and so I like to be able to go outside or I just got my hammock. But as time progresses, I'm sure I'll go out and find some trees and just at least just sit there and be outside. When it's sunny, like go for walks, even if it's just like a 10 or 5 minute walks, even if it's just sitting outside on your porch. These are all things that we have to do. Something that my therapist has told me, whenever, even without like a pandemic, people still feel repressed to stay inside, whether that be depression or anxiety. And so I know that those feelings are happening a lot more lately, but like even just standing in front of a window can help get you a little bit of that, the vitamins that you need to actually have the physical response of being just a little bit more relaxed or alleviate some symptoms of your anxiety. And so those are some of the things that I've been trying to do and remind myself and remind my students is that, we have a little bit, not as much as we used to, but we do have some. If you have any furry friends at home, that really helps. Like I have my cat. So, we relax. We just sit there together, and that, for me, that helps alleviate some anxiety.
Yeah, for sure. I also have 2 dogs, and they're always with me. And it just makes life much easier to deal with because, you have somebody else that is looking up for you for their survival. And
Yeah.
you kind of have to like toughen up a little bit and let the world kind of beat you down a little bit, because you have to be strong for your cat or for your dog or for your kids. And I know that you're very involved, with the earth and environment. And what would be one thing that people can do to help the earth in this kind of crazy times?
I've been thinking about that a lot lately, especially with having to change our Earth Ambassador projects, because by the time Earth Day comes, we'll still be under like a kind of like a stay-at-home notion. And so some of the things that I'm seeing throughout the world is people reporting like how their rivers have really just like cleared up, or how the air is cleaner, or how the animals are coming back and things like that. And so one of the best things that I think we can do for each other, and I mean especially the earth, is just doing that, is staying home and letting the earth also have this time to relax and to just kind of not respond or anything like that, but to like gather itself back and heal a lot from what we've done. I hope also like the response from what we've seen of having us be using less like emissions, carbon emissions, using our car less, using a lot of less energy, is that after this, maybe right now we can use the time to plan how we're going to kind of instill those ways even after a pandemic. And I know that also people are going out and foraging for foods. There's a lot of spring foods that are coming up right now. And so if you can find, the time and the will and just the ableness to do that, then I think that'll also, help you and in that connection, because maybe you didn't get to think about that before. So those are just a couple of things that I've been kind of pondering over, but of course I'm still open to suggestions. I'm still learning, and especially right now, I know it's hard on everybody, but we do have a large community of Indigenous people that we can make it. We have done it. And of course there was a huge loss with everything that's happened, 200 years ago to us, and we never want to see that happen again. But I think trying to remember those traditions and what we're doing right now together can help us pull that through.
Those are very beautiful words, and I thank you so much for sharing with me and everybody else that is listening to our podcast. And I want to thank you again from the bottom of my heart for participating with us, and I look forward to seeing you soon again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.